friend, I'm Deborah Larson.
And I'm Katie Shive.
And you're listening to the Redeeming Her podcast, where we aim to create a safe place for honest conversations that will inspire you to discover God's love through your pain. Our goal is to help you reframe your story and find freedom for the future.
So grab a latte and maybe some Kleenex, and let's dive into this week's episode. Well, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Redeeming Her. We are so excited to have you guys joining us this week. As always, we have some really great stuff promised for you today. And I'm really excited because we are going to be interviewing somebody that is really near and dear to my heart. As you guys know a little bit of my story, of losing my dad a few years ago, Raymond, who's going to be on this call, is just somebody that's been a huge champion in my corner and somebody that is like a father to me and who I love. So without stealing any thunder, I'm going to kick it over to Deborah to get to introduce him. And then we have some really good conversation for you.
Well, some of you have heard our previous episodes, and I talk about my best friend and kind of how God brought us together. So it is my joy and my delight to have him on today. And in that, let's not waste any time. This is my husband, Raymond Larson, of going on 16 years, and
yes,
I am so excited to hear what God has to speak through you as we talk about the journey of loss and what it was like personally and personally twice. We can say it that way.
Yeah.
Katie.
So Raymond, let's dive in. Can you just share a little bit about your story? Like, just tell us the high level overview. Like, who are you? Like, what makes you Raymond?
Well, thank you. Hi, Deborah and Katie. Good to see you both. Important is I was a Jesus movement hippie, gave my life to Christ in 1970, jumped right into sharing life in the kingdom of God. That was my passion, my living. I ventured into pastoring for 30 years. During that time, my first wife passed away. My wife of 31 years passed away. The unique difference between what the theme of your content and subject is that when someone gets diagnosed with a terminal disease, it takes many, many months for the culmination of that experience. And of course, the whole time we wanted her healing, her kids and I particularly. But when she passed, I spent literally 18 months slowly watching her decay and withdraw. And you go through a lot of your mourning in a process time. You have time, you begin to think, you calculate what's next, what can you do, how can you serve, how can you help? And so it is stark contrast to what happened to Deborah's son, Jeremy. Oh, by the way, I'm now an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own company, and I'm in the marketplace, having a lot of fun talking to people, touching people every day. So there's the sum total for you.
So every time I feel like, obviously I've known you for so long now, and yet every time we're together or we're talking, you'll pull a story out of your hat because you have some of your upbringing was in Hollywood, and like you just have the most wild stories of people that you've met. And, you know, if anything, one of my favorite things with you is to just sit down and listen to your God stories, because you're one of the most humble people, and that there's so much that you don't share that's just deep in your heart, but you have the most beautiful, wild God stories. And I love, you really embody what friendship with the Holy Spirit looks like. And I think that is what has positioned you to walk through loss twice, because, you know, not a lot of people lose a spouse and then walk through it and lose a child. So I want to talk a little bit about that. You shared that you lost your first wife, and that was to cancer, right?
Yes, correct.
And so that was a really long, it wasn't sudden and unexpected. And then the difference with Jeremy was it was sudden and unexpected.
Yes.
What was it like for you going through loss a second time, or more watching your now wife go through her most painful loss, knowing what you had a similar experience? Like, how did that prepare you to support Deborah through her loss?
Well, I think the latter part of your question was the most important, watching my beloved wife face something that you couldn't anticipate. As much as he was a fireman and they know that they signed on to live a life of risk, Jeremy seemed to always avoid those things. He always seemed to conquer and go above. In the city of Redding, he was one that was known for overcoming. He was the go-to guy, sometimes more
Right.
than the chief. And I don't mind. I'm not going to apologize for saying that. But I do remember the day that we waited all night. We were informed the night before that Jeremy had been missing. Of course, we heard the next day. And I tried to reflect back at that point about my previous experience. It's a completely different type of loss. Losing a spouse, albeit extremely hard and painful, it's nothing like losing one of your children. You know, the old adage, which isn't biblical, it's just an adage, your kids are never supposed to pass into eternity before you. That's just the way we live it. So was I familiar with loss? I was, but I wasn't familiar with, first of all, the overarching dynamic of a city hero dying. A city hero who was the firstborn of my beloved bride, and they were best friends, and they were inseparable in so many dynamic ways earlier in their life. So I just got quiet. All I could do is, you know, there are no words, and that's a popular phrase in our family. There are no words. You can't really capture what's going on. So all I could do was hold her when she would, listen to the whole dynamic, and then get involved in the interaction in the city of Redding. All these literally hundreds of people involved in a very private loss for my bride. And all I could do was support. I was able to help with the grandkids quite a bit. The grandson and I kind of went away a couple times together and hung out, but I just tried to be quiet and pray and support.
You know, you really were that. And it's when you talk about, you know, just his
were
memorial.
There. That's right. You were there.
Yeah, because I was there, but it was a community-wide event. It literally was hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe even thousands, probably thousands filled the auditorium. And it was a huge event. And to know
then the other dynamic of that, Katie, is that I had been well known in that city because I pastored the largest church in the North Valley. And to go back as a private citizen, uninvolved in the corporate dynamics. And Jeremy had become this significant, larger than life person after I left.
Right.
So when we got into the limo, when we got into with people that we probably wouldn't have rode in the limo with, and had to go through all those dynamics, all I could do was give Deborah looks of support. I believe in prayer, and I believe you can pray without praying out loud. So under my breath, I prayed a lot and asked God to really hold Deborah tightly. And he really did. He held her very, very tightly.
One of my favorite memories of the memorial itself, it was beautiful and also very painful for very obvious reasons. You guys were sitting in the front row and I was just a few rows back behind you guys. But when the bagpipers played Amazing Grace, and you know, you and Deborah, just your arms linked around each other and one arm on each side, you both just raised your hands. And this, you know, might have looked like, you know, an action, but I knew for you guys, it was this place of resolute worship of like, this is the most tragic, painful thing I have ever walked through. And if it were up to Deborah, none of that would have happened on a public stage. But even in the midst of that, to see the two of you, you know, bound together in your union of love and support in the deepest of despair, and to just worship the Lord in front of your son and in front of the Lord and everybody, was beyond what words can describe.
And even with our hope that we will see him again, our greatest hope is that there is a family reunion someday. It doesn't
And
take
there
away
will
the
be.
immediate, tragic, overwhelming pain that Deborah was feeling. And I could only be a supporter. Was I pained? I was. But Deborah and her sons are very close, as I am with
Right.
my children, and the dynamic of that. So all I could do was, we didn't plan to stand up. We just did.
Sure.
And,
Right.
and because that is our heart, to worship him and to live out loud for him. And one of our passions in this journey, and I applaud you and Deborah for this remarkable podcast, is that you want to help people understand the ways to overcome and have victory when things come into your life that you can't anticipate. There was no way to anticipate this. We had a missionary living in our home at the time, and the sheer shock and the dynamic. And yet I will say about my bride, she never lost her joy. She never lost her sense of value in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a compliment. If I may, I would love to just identify the specifics that were such a blessing to me. Ray, was touch. There wasn't a time or a place to talk. There are many times I couldn't talk. And just the sheer fact that he was by me and he would reach over and touch me just sent so much message of love and support, because truly there are no words. And that was the initial sentence that the Lord gave me when his bride was dying. And we were praying for her at the church, was reach out to him. And I'm like, I was working trauma and donation. And I said, there are no words, Lord. What am I supposed to say? And he said just that. And so in this exchange of our relationship, both in his loss and then mine, literally we functioned without talking. And that's huge communication for so many people when they're on stage. And I mean, it was private and there was no privacy. And that was probably the hardest, is I was in a fishbowl with the whole entire community who came out. Like there was literally over 5,000 there, and probably at least 10 to 15,000 on the streets, so it was, the communication was still going between Ray and I. And that was what helped me the most.
Well, and if I may, I was acquainted with loss because I pastored what was then called a mega church. I'm not sure it identifies that way now, size-wise, but I had done a lot of funerals. I had been where children had drowned. I had lived with a lot of those dynamics, but I really wasn't acquainted with grief the way Deborah and I were about ready to experience grief together, because it was the child of our family. It was the oldest, the firstborn of our blended families together. And I realized that next day, as much as I had been supportive of people in grief, I really didn't understand the depth of support needed in a nuclear family to overcome that.
Well, I think, I mean, exactly that. You just, wherever you're at in your journey, you don't really know what you need until you're in that journey, right? But
That's right.
I love how the Holy Spirit always equips us. I mean, it's this beautiful picture that he's in our tomorrows as he's in our past, and he's in our today. And so, you didn't know before that you guys would be losing Jeremy, but yet you were prepared. And I think that's the goodness of the Lord, to give you what you need when you do need it. And you never would have known, and there's no way that you can prepare that. But yet you were and you continue to be the most beautiful compliment to Deborah in both ways. But let's talk about some of the, the first year or so after loss. I know, another shakeup to your story was that you guys moved across the country, right?
We did.
And that
We
was
did.
about a year later. Side note, I will just interject this a little fun note. I remember the first time you told me that you guys were thinking about going to Texas. I had literally just had my baby. I think it was the day before you came to visit us in the hospital, and you had mentioned that you guys were really thinking about moving. And I'm like, I have this brand new baby. Like, how do I move across the country with them? But
Yeah.
But anyways, so can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like what was that journey for you guys? And when you got to Texas, how has it been a season of healing, or what has been this season for you guys?
Great question. Well, first of all, after you're done with the busyness, I've always said the best time to help people when they're grieving is after the celebrations of life are over and everybody's gone back to normal life. You're not
Mm-hmm.
eating together. If you remember, someone rented us a house and we ate in that
Mm-hmm.
house, all of us together for those 2 or 3 days. Brandon, my oldest, flew in and we did a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that dynamic together. It's when everything goes silent
Mm-hmm.
and Deborah felt this need to be normal. And in some ways, no normal again. There's a new
Right.
normality that emerges because of your ability to grab onto what you know and how you operate. But there would be weeks Deborah's a very hardworking person, has her hand in many pies, as you know, and does a lot for a lot of people. And she would suddenly be hit during those first few months I'm sure she thought about Jeremy being gone every day, probably every moment, but she did not always express that outwardly. In fact, she would tell you, quite honestly, there are times I wasn't as supportive in those quiet times as I was during the crisis. Part of that's because that's what I was familiar with doing. But
Right.
it's the emerging relationship we developed after that, a deep, abiding togetherness that when you face crisis, you either grow and mature and develop, or you get set back and stay in the quagmire where you are. And we developed a very strong, in fact, some of the clearest things we heard from God was during that year after we left. I mean, why would he suddenly tell us to leave? And we're so grateful for everything he's done in our lives. But through crisis, Deborah and I become better friends than we could have ever imagined. It did not separate us. It sometimes challenged us, but we grew deeper because of it. And so that first year was episodal in nature. It would come and then it would go away. Then it would come again, and a phone call would trigger or a picture would trigger. And all you can do is, first of all, you got to have great hope. To lose a
Mm-hmm.
child without hope is the greatest tragedy known to mankind. We had our hope. We're steadfast. It says in Hebrews, he is the anchor of our soul. And Deborah really did jump deeper into him. And she jumped deeper. We were leading a community of believers. She jumped deep into serving, loving, and caring. Quite honestly, people didn't know how to take it because Deborah was hurting on the inside, but very strong on the outside. Not as a fake-aid, but
Mm-hmm.
knowing that her personal journey could not circumvent her calling. And so that was, like I said, it was episodal. We had days where we're very frustrated. And then we're in Texas and we're doing a wedding and we feel God says, move to Texas. I'm confident now that I don't recommend people move when something happens. That's not my recommendation. But his movement of us was strategic and timely. And every time we moved somewhere, we've had nowhere to live. We moved without anywhere to go. And one of the things I'll say about Deborah Larson is if God says go, she goes. And we commonly left 3 weeks after we heard. It was kind of a weird pattern in our lives. But
Right.
we
It's
moved, we had
fast.
nobody here, and we had no friends here. We had to deepen our conversation with the Lord and with one another. So literally, we deepened because of the absence of all the other pieces of
Right.
life that are there. So quite a journey.
So Deborah, I want to talk to you a little bit about your perspective of that transition season too, because I know I feel like so much of your healing and really deeping into this began when you got to Texas. That's when I first started to notice you kind of could take a deep breath and come through some of this. But one of the things I think you shared with me, maybe it was somebody else, but talking about the story of Lot and his wife when they were leaving, and the Lord said, "Do not look back," right? And I think you had told me about that of like, yes, the Lord is transitioning us, but the Lord told me not to look back. And so, can you talk to me about you transitioning into that new season and how the Lord, what the Lord meant, like what he was doing with that word, like the importance of not looking back into your season, but stepping forward into the next thing.
I forgot about that sentence. That's interesting
Hmm.
that was captivating. I do know that when he called us there, he did tell me that this would be a season of healing and that
Right.
I would get some R&R, that I could do that. Well, as you and I both know, when there's so much internal stuff going on, emotional stuff going on, especially from trauma, you want to be busy. Like I did not want to sit and rest. And it was right in the middle of COVID. It had just come out.
You did.
We moved. I was in a friend's house for 4 months. And even though they didn't physically live there full time, they physically lived there. And so there was all of my, all of our comfort and all the things that I was familiar with was in storage. And so it was it was
And
almost like,
no real privacy.
no, not really. And so we had a few friends here from before, but it was in Austin, so it was really different. And I remember that when we first moved in, and I was like anxious to get a house so I could just get in and settle. And then it went on for 4 months. During that time, I was emotionally rocked a lot. I used to wake up and tell Raymond, he'd go to work, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't even know who I am right now. I have no idea what's going on inside of me. I can't figure this out. And I felt like that everything just came and collided like waves, just came and collided, and I didn't know how to get my bearings. And it was a long 4 months like that. I mean, I tried walking, I tried working out. That's the time that we bought our Rhodesian Ridgebacks, because I remember saying, Lord, I need a comfort animal. I need something that can communicate with me with emotions and no words, because they don't expect anything and they love you. And so I said, I need to have a dog, Ray. And he goes, really? I was like,
We've never had a dog.
no, my dog of 17 years, we actually had to put down when we moved here the first time. And so it didn't really start to relax for me until we got into our home. And then again, it was COVID and the isolation was huge. So it was kind of like forced placed recuperation. And
right.
I'm not really a good prisoner. I don't do good.
No, you are not.
And
we can all agree on that.
I'm not a good prisoner, and I will break out every which way I can. So it's there that I began to listen more closely. And, I came in, I set up my office, and I pulled all of his things out, and I'm going to make sure Jeremy's with me. And it didn't feel like I lost him or that he wasn't with me. I just think it was the only familiar comfort place that I could anchor in, because we have a house that doesn't have a lot of walls. It's that farmhouse thing, so there's not like a lot of pictures everywhere. And I thought, well, this will be my personal space, so it won't be invasive when we have company and things like that. And then I remember about, I don't know, a couple of months we were here, and then the Holy Spirit said to me about his little cowboy boots I pulled out, from my baby things. And this little belt that has his name on it that could wrap around his bicep now,
Right.
And it's so funny. And he spoke to me, he said, how long has it been since he was able to wear that? I'm like, huh? He goes, how long has it been since that was, that you had that out? And I'm like, 35 years, and the goodness of God was he just gently walked me in to questions and kindness. That's good. Didn't say any more. How long has it been? Said a lot to me. No kidding. Why am I pulling this down? What about this? I had like 5 pictures of him in the office and everything. And then he said, how long are you going to stay in the past? This is about looking back. How long are you going to go back to that place and keep it in the present? It's not even useful. You've had it in the attic for all this time. And so it reminded me of, don't look back on the loss as loss would have you do it. Don't look back on the grief that would tie you to that grave. I've only been to 2 gravesides, his father's and my son's, because I don't believe in the grave and worshiping it. And I have to say, when we watched that casket go in 6 feet, I thought I was going to lose it. And that's when I said, I just have to worship. I have to pray. I have to worship, or I'm going to lose it, because it's so final. And yet I know it's final in the flesh. It's not final in the spirit realm. And so when he had me disassemble things, I told Raymond, don't be upset. I'm just kind of setting this out here for a minute, and I'll get to it. And I think the get to it was 2 weeks. And you were so gracious. You were so gracious. And it's a big counter, and we have it sitting right in the kitchen. And I would pass by it every day. And it was a couple of weeks before anyone said anything. I think Raymond mentioned about how long is that going to be there? And the Holy Spirit said, don't you think it's time? And if looking back means that it anchors you in the grief, then we're subordinate to the kingdom, because grief does not live in heaven. Although Jesus said he was acquainted with grief, he never let it move in. And somehow in the moment of loss in our heart, the moment of where we feel like I just need something, like you were even saying, when we talked about you moving to Montana, I just need familiarity around me. I need to feel comfortable in that place, because inside the waves are really crashing. And then trying to build and write, I thought, well, I'll write a book, and I had no idea that journey would be about my healing. I kept thinking, it's about my son. I can do that. That'll bring victory to me. And yet it was 2 years and still in the making now, but it was about me and the healing of the things that he wanted me to pull from my history, but not to be married to it. And I think that's what it meant, even for like Lot's wife. Move forward. This is gone, meaning whatever you had there is no more. And you're moving into the new normal, as Raymond was saying, the new person of you who I didn't even know. And so I think that was probably the most significant there.
And we live with this tension. We never want to forget. We want to love them, remember them. And yet even the people of Israel were warned not to get stuck in the trauma of loss over Moses. You have to have that unique challenge where you're moving forward, but you're never forgetting. Like we always say.
It's like moving on, but moving forward doesn't mean you're moving forward, but you're not moving on.
You're staying with the purpose. You're staying with the plan. You're staying with the destiny. But the people that brought you there, particularly our children, will always be very, very close to our hearts and never out of our minds.
Right. I love that. And I love, there's so much there. Raymond, I want to ask you a question for our listeners, whether it's the women or maybe their spouses or partners are listening as well. What encouragement would you give to a husband that is listening, and how they can support their wife? Like, what was the biggest takeaway for you?
Well, 2 things just jump off the page. Number 1 is don't act like you have any answers. We're not trying to categorize why someone died or what the result of that is. They have passed. They've slipped from this realm to the next. It's very difficult. So don't give candid answers. Don't give and don't dismiss your spouse's journey. Of course we want to move on with our lives. Of course we want to build fun, exciting new memories and not let the residue of tragedy consume us. But we don't know. No 2 people are alike. Deborah moved very quickly ahead. I think sometimes maybe too quickly at that point, because she has always been a forward-moving person. Let's get on with the cause. Let's get on with the purpose. We wake up every day with assignment. That's the way we live our lives. But as a spouse, let it take its time and continue to bring encouragement toward forward movement without it being an indictment. Move forward. What can we do today to grow our destiny, grow our purpose, deepen our love? And there was this old short story called "How Shall We Remember Johnny," where this family lost a child, and the child's favorite meal was breakfast. So every day they ate the same breakfast every day, every day to remember Johnny. About 6 months into it, they forgot why they did it. that Johnny's no longer the memory. We want to
Yeah.
have dynamic conversation that enables us to laugh, to remember. Jeremy was a really funny kind of furry Care Bear. You know, he was gruff on the outside, soft on the inside. Never let you see that unless you had a vulnerable moment. He was particularly that way with his children. Very, very gentle. So we try to remember those things. We have pictures around and we look at them. And when we look at those pictures now, we don't remember his death. We remember his life. And that's what you have to build on.
I love that. And Deborah, for you, what was a thing that you now know you needed the most? Or let me rephrase this, I guess. How did Raymond support you? Like, what was the best way that Raymond supported you? That you might not have realized it at the time, but looking back, you had mentioned some touch and no words, but was there anything else like practical, like him talking about Jeremy or, him just giving you space maybe to go process? Like what was there anything practically that he did that helped you?
He let me talk about Jeremy. And I know that story could be old for somebody. I mean, technically by blood, that's not his child. We didn't raise him together. Even in a blended family, they were already grown. But he embraced my kids like I embraced his. Like, this is our family. This is how we move on and we move together. But sometimes, when you're in a group of people and they all know you lost a child and they kind of stay away from that topic because they don't know if you're going to lose it or if you're going to keep it together. I never had to worry about that with him. And then sometimes, 3 or 4 years in, I could tell I was talking too much about some things, or I'd be struggling with writing or something. And he'd give me that look. I'm like, okay, we're done with this conversation. But in the tough moments when I didn't even know, I'm not an outside processor. I'm not a verbal processor. But when I would talk about the stories, it always included Jeremy. And he never confronted it. He didn't say, when is that going to be over? I've heard other clients and stuff talk about their husband goes, how long are we going to do this? And I'm like, however long it takes me to get through it.
That's right.
And that's what he allowed me. He allowed me, and I felt like I was talking too much about it, but I didn't think it was from pain. I thought it was and I became more verbal as I started to heal and see things differently, but it's still the same conversation to him, And so he was gracious to allow me that time even to ramble. Or if I'd go up and we'd pick out these pictures, I'm like, oh, I remember this. And I'd go down childhood lane, and I'd talk about my kids and he has no reference point either. And so it was gracious for him to just participate even by supporting. And then he'd ask me questions and then we'd make jokes about it, So he was called the grizzly Care Bear, not the furry one.
Grizzlies are furry.
It was funny, but he was, because he was he had tattoos everywhere, all over his body. He was mean. He was all blustery.
He was a big man.
Big man, and he had this huge front about who he was. And then we'd laugh. I'm like, oh, dude. I go, Jumi, because I call him Jumi. He's like, well, Mom. And I go, oh, you're still my little kid. And we would cut up like that. So he was tender on the inside, but because of his job and his reputation, he had to be the strong man. So that was fun. We'd talk about that, and we'd play, how I played with Amelia and Cohen last time I was there, tossing him over the lakes. So I would have those conversations, and it was therapeutic for me, but I didn't think it was therapy until I moved beyond that place. And even then, I'm literally looking at the early parts of my life that triggered when he died, the loss and the loss and the loss that built up over my history of life and where he was in it. And now I don't feel all of that was healing, allowing me to talk about it.
One of the things that's really helped is you bought us this video photo album, right? Every day in our house, pictures flash. I think it's really helped, and this is purely my conjecture. We see Jeremy at all stages of his life every day on that. So it becomes a gentle reminder of what is and what is to come, the fond memories. Because when you close with a funeral, the finale of that, you've got to capture what life is all about. We really do celebrate his life and that sort of thing.
Right.
So thank you for that photo album, and it's really helped us. And didn't realize till now how important it was.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool practical, gift also is,
Mhm.
because it's not a permanently fixed photo. So it's
Right.
not like every time you walk down the hallway you're going to get triggered, but because it rotates and you can select what you put in there. But I love that as just,
It was a help.
gentle
Yeah.
reminders, gentle memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the one picture of he
Um,
and Seth trying to be Superman. Just a really great little picture.
Yeah, super beautiful memories. Well, what I hear from your story, just to kind of put a bow on all of this, because there's so much here, is, when I, from an outside looking in, I've had a very front row seat into your lives, and you really are family to my family. Um, but when I look at your marriage, the one word or phrase that comes to mind is enduring love.
Wow.
And,
Oh,
not that you guys just love each other, but it has been enduring. When you think about marrying somebody, most of the time we can get caught up in the overwhelm positively, how you feel and how they're your best friend and all of these things. But, never when you're making those vows are you anticipating loss and tragedy and some of the things that all of us have experienced. And so, you look at your personal backgrounds that led you to the point of your union, and then the relationship that you had moving forward. You guys had forged a beautiful relationship that has really endured your hardest days. And
hmm.
when you look at that, they always say, I think it really statistically, if you look, it's the loss of a child is one of the number one causes of divorce, because it really does rip apart your own flesh and then your marriage. But you guys have really done the opposite. Instead of diverting and going in separate corners, you have literally been each other's champions. And to watch, Raymond, for you, you just always remind me of the kinsman redeemer. You're like the Boaz in the way that you have just
Wow.
so gently, you've supported Deborah, not just in words and emotion, but even on a practical level with stepping outside of ministry into entrepreneurship. That has given Deborah a freedom to take some stress off, to step back and heal what she's needed. And I know not everybody has that ability or luxury, but just in so many ways, you have been a reflection of Christ, redeeming things for her. And then second to that, just your marriage and how you guys, it has been enduring. And I think that's a reflection of the heart of the Father, is enduring love. And that's what this journey is about, is going deep and weathering any storm or any mountain peak.
Agreed.
So thank you for sharing today. I would love to have you back to unpack some stuff again, but you just have so much humility and so much vulnerability that you share. Really, vulnerability is strength, and we need that. We need strong men. We need strong fathers. So thank you for modeling that and for
And you're
just
married
your
to one,
presence
so we're
today.
excited for that. You're married to a strong one. So.
Yes, we will have Coop. He will probably talk all about the physics and the mechanics and the engineering of, I don't know, maybe he can talk about the physics of grief, if that's even a thing. But
Well, I bet that would be a great message, the physics of grief. Thank you, ladies, for
yes,
having me on today. It's a privilege to share your journey.
Well,
cool.
of course, we knew that you would just hit it out of the ballpark because why is that, Katie? Because
Uh,
everybody loves
Raymond,
Raymond.
everybody loves Raymond.
Oh,
And
if that
here's the
were
thing.
true. If that were true.
Everybody loves Raymond, but in true fashion, he also married Deborah. So
That's
not
right.
all are just, we always say that. Sometimes we're rolling our eyes and sometimes we're saying that jokingly, but everybody loves Raymond.
That's right.
True.
So for our guest, thank you so much for allowing
Thank
us to
you.
share all of this. Raymond, thank you for being vulnerable and honest and sharing about our life. And Katie, thank you for always finding the most beautiful purpose and picture out of every single podcast that we do. Thank you
Amazing.
very much.
Amazing.
And I want to remind people to hit the button to like and share, join our newsletter, and don't forget, what is it, the reminder thing? so that you get a notification when we produce another podcast.
Like and subscribe and follow along so you'll never miss an episode. All right, guys. Well, until next time, I hope you guys have a great week, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in with us. We pray that you're encouraged and find the truth that will set you free on your journey.
To learn more about Redeeming Her ministry or how to partner with us, please check the show notes for links or visit RedeemingHer.com. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode.